Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to another installment of Strategic Music Entrepreneurship Development. I'm your host, Dr. Ruiz, and this is now the fifth class. Woohoo! I know what number class this is. Last week I didn't. I was like, we're in the sixth class, right? They're like, no, we're in number four. But just wait until you hit your 30s. You'll understand. Okay. Um, yeah. Hey guys, we have two really awesome people who just happen to be rock stars without doing rock music, by the way. And yeah, so Thaddeus, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you?
Okay. I don't know from one day to the other. Um, I'm Dr. Thaddeus Bourne. I'm on the voice faculty here. I'm so happy to be joined by my friend Keri Alkema, who is just one of the most fantastic humans alive and also an internationally renowned operatic artist who most down to earth, most wonderful person you will ever meet, and you're about to meet her. Also, Gator herself. So
Go Gators.
she was here and doing the thing as a music major, and now she's all over the world doing the thing as an artist and changing the world. Not only through her beautiful voice and her, you have to let me gush because I'm just such a big fan of
You were supposed to talk
who
about
she
you.
is. Oops. So, but also through her incredible entrepreneurship and activism, which you see on her podcast, Screaming Divas, in which I say activism because she is actively advocating for the rights of artists, for our ability to create, for our right to be treated as human beings, to be fairly compensated, to be respected in a space where we make art, where we give that to the world, where we work to make the world a better place. And so it is such a privilege for me to be here with her and for us to share this with all of you.
Okay, so about Thaddeus Bourne.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, well, thank you. I love you. Thank you. Okay.
Look, this is what the deal is. We have Thaddeus Bourne, Latin Grammy award-winning album 2022, baritone vocalist, and he happens to be a professor here. All right. And he's doing amazing stuff, and he's intersecting opera with pop and merging opera, pop. When I say pop, I'm talking about urban pop, like urban hip hop and things like that. Collaborating in that particular sphere, working with rappers, working with producers and things like that, while retaining the essence of who he is as a vocalist or a vocal artist, which is very exciting. and and then I brought them both because, in essence, what Dr. Bourne was saying about Keri is absolutely true. All in a nutshell, we have a celebrity opera singer in the house, online, digitally. All right.
I don't know if that
So yes.
celebrity.
All right. No, she is. All right. And you can visit her website right here, so everybody could explore. Well, you don't think we're lying to you, haha. All right, this translates in Chinese, simplified. That's great. Somebody asked.
Divas.com too.
Oh, there's also screamingdivas.com.
Yes.
I could have just typed that in
I
instead
didn't.
of
I didn't
yelling it
mess.
out.
I didn't mess around with that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, screamingdivas.com. So, right there, you just read the bio. Look, a voice with an appealing brew. Ooh, like coffee of dark and creamy colors. The New York Times. Lyrical spinto soprano Keri Alkema has been praised for her tonal opulence. I will Google that word in a second. By the Washington Post, and a insensitive musicality by the New York Times as well. So you can read it. I mean, yeah, she's basically a massive star. Okay. So why did I have these two? It's really not even to talk about the opera space. All right. I think the things that you and I, when I say you and I talk about, the students here and us, what we relate is that we are in academia trying to pursue career, and we're getting a lot of this information, and you're getting a lot of information that normally it would not be a normal thing in academia. And we've already discussed all the things, and y'all are up to date with all these models, frameworks of entrepreneurship, and your business plans are coming along very well. All that stuff is awesome. But now we're entering into a very exciting unit where we're talking about value creation, lead generation, so how to build your clientele, and price setting and negotiations. And so we'll be doing that. These are big topics that will need reiteration, so we're going to be doing this for the next 3 weeks. But it's so exciting. It's my favorite topic, and you're gonna have fun. I think you're gonna build your confidence in doing so. But these are people that do this in a particular space that likes to treat musicians really bad, but they don't treat them really bad. And it's because they've stood up for themselves. And she does have a podcast, screamingdivas.com, that has been a major a platform to empower, increase self-efficacy among singers and opera artists and even musicians and beyond. And so she interviews people from all kinds of different disciplines, from rock artists who are continuing to tour in Europe to conductors and producers and different things like that. So I will be facilitating some questions, and then we'll open it up. Cool. Super. So the first question that I have, and I want to hear from both of your perspectives, is, okay, you both were in academia. Keri, you were here, and you were a student, and then you started landing your different gigs. At what point did you just switch this mindset for where you realize that you do actually have value and you've paid your dues? Because there's a fine line, that students are afraid to cross, which is like they haven't set or quantified or even qualified their work, and they just say, oh, I just need to pay my dues. I need to take up any opportunity that's not paid. At what point did you transition and just realize, what, what led you to really value yourself at that level, to where you started charging? Yeah.
For opera singers, like once you finish with university, whether that's undergraduate or graduate student or even doctoral, and you want to pursue a career standing on stage, in America, they really want you to be in young artist programs. So they have summer young artist programs, and then they have year-round programs in the big opera houses around the country. So the goal was to do that. I knew that I was ready to be on my own, meaning that I didn't have a company paying me a salary to be a young artist. When I go out on my own, it means that I have to find a manager, and then they've got to put me in front of every company that they can get me in front of to sing for jobs. My jobs are contracted jobs. That's if I don't have a contracted job, I don't work. So it's, in essence, jumping off a cliff financially and jumping off a cliff career-wise to see, I'm jumping in this big pool of people. Can I make it? Am I going to be hired? And so I knew I had one last summer young artist program. It was at Santa Fe. It's one of the big summer ones really in the country. I mean, in the world. It's very well respected. And I was standing there and I was listening to the big wigs, the people that I wanted to be sing. And I thought, I can do that just as well as she can, if not better. I know that in my soul. And so, not that she wasn't great, but I just thought, I know I can do this. Like I could stand next to her and hold my own. So that's when I knew I didn't want to do it anymore. And that's when I changed gears and said, okay, who do I want to manage me? And then I found that manager, went with that person, and then put me in front of these companies. This is where I want to start. These are the companies and sizes of companies I want to start with. And that's what happened.
They told you this is what you should start with, or you did the homework?
I did.
These are the ones
I did. I did my homework. I did my homework on management, on who didn't have me, who didn't have, or how many they had of me. And I thought, I want the one with the least amount of me so that I'm the one getting put first, for these jobs. And then once I was with that person that I wanted, I said, okay, I want these opera companies because these are the size opera companies I want to sing these first roles, like my first time doing this. I want this experience here, here, and here. And then we built from there. So no, I drove that. And that's the thing that in my business singers forget is that they're working for me. That manager is working for me. I make the decisions. We have a collaboration and we talk and we figure things out. And if we're not in agreement, I mean, there's arguments, but if we're not on the same page from the get-go, that's not the right manager. So yeah.
This is great because we have some students here that actually want to become a manager. Okay, so this is really good information. Hey, Vanny, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. All right. Just so you know, we got two guests that are talking about how to generate leads, and negotiate value creation and price setting. So world-renowned opera singer Keri Alkema and Grammy-winning vocalist Thaddeus Bourne. So, all right, great. So Thaddeus, when did the turning point? When did you realize, you know what, I need to be getting paid more than what? Because nobody told you what it was while you were in school.
No, so as you know, I did my bachelor's and master's as a flutist actually, and started taking voice lessons to get the breath support down, and then decided that I really liked yelling in foreign languages while playing with swords. So, who wouldn't love that? And then for a while, the thing with the young artist programs in the United States is that you really have to fit into a nice kind of preconceived box. And if you don't in any way, people will either they'll take you and try to shove you into the box, or they just won't take you at all.
Right.
Which is completely backwards, right? Because once you cross over to main stage, then they want you to be this rare flower that has never existed before. So for me, I was in this place where my voice was kind of in between tenor and baritone, and we couldn't find the right repertoire, and that took more of those sort of pinnacle young artist years. So I thought, well, I don't want to just not sing. I love singing. So I would just go out and just wholesale. I would do any audition I could. If you ran a Walmart, but you might want a singer, I'd come bark for you. And I really just got into, always being prepared, always building a network. And from that, I started getting referred to have more and more work. And I kind of went in the way that I've never actually had an agent, just because I've always kind of just done it myself and shown up at the same auditions as my friends who had them. And at some point I realized, I don't want to pay this fee to somebody else. I'm already doing this work. So I guess for me, it was kind of an evolution, because it was through that. And then as I get busier and busier, I had to start thinking about, well, what are these gigs worth to me? So maybe this one's paying me, this one, and this one, because they help me pay my bills. Absolutely. This over here, that doesn't seem rewarding at all. I'm not doing that for free. But, pay to me is also not just about money. Sometimes it would be, hey, this gig is not paying anything. I won't lose money on it, but I get to see these friends in this area of the country, or I get to try this role on in a place that's really kind of no pressure. Absolutely. So in what it gives me artistically, or the people that I get to have in my life, I got into this mindset of there does need to be something coming back to me. So what's it giving back? There's the practical side of money, yes, and that's always there. But there's other things that it could be giving back, and realizing, I won't speak on behalf of Keri, but I think there's a point where you start to realize, I don't have to ask for permission to be an artist. I don't have to justify taking in the air that I breathe. So it does need to be worth it to me in some way, shape, or form. And I find the more that I own that, the better artist I become. So
Totally.
Yeah, wow. Class, do you realize, like, part of what they all said? I know exactly what I'm going to say. Elias, what am I going to say?
It's the 10 factors for professional consideration.
Yep, 10 factors for professional opportunity consideration. This is yeah. So again, I came up with that based on my anecdotal experience, but also just part of my anecdotal experience is not just professionally, but also just through conversations and what I have heard that is valued across the board. And so so Keri and Thaddeus, the 10 factors is that 7 factors pertain to things. This is what I teach them. Whenever you're going to take an opportunity or even consider an opportunity, you want to have 7 factors that you want to look for that the opportunity provides, and at least 4 of them need to be meaningful for you. in order for you to maybe, well, just to consider, not to say yes or no, to consider, but you have 3 external variables that have to remain intact, and you cannot sacrifice those 3 remaining variables. So the 7 opportunities to look for is the task. What are you being asked to do? Is it meaningful for you, right? At this stage of your life. The money, is it meaningful? The hang, the portfolio, is it going to be meaningful? You know, I mean, if you've done this thing many, many, many times, and maybe there are other factors, but maybe the portfolio is not. Okay, so then don't count that, right? The connections, is it going to be meaningful connections, you know, where you're going to be able to present an idea maybe even further? For example, I made a connection with you today. So, and matter of fact, I'm already presenting ideas. You're already presenting ideas to me that we can collaborate. We're already talking about having you back, you see? So then there's also the learning. And so, you know, I mean, for Thaddeus, you know, he tends to be very humble, as we know earlier in today's presentation. So he just loves to learn, and he finds that really valuable, the experience. And then there's also service, which is like, how is what you're doing addressing a greater need? So that's like that social aspect, you know, that Keri does with screamingdivas.com, which, by the way, I mean, that website title probably costs a lot of money now. That is awesome. Screaming
Okay,
Divas.
so all of this is like so brilliant that you have to come on Screaming Divas now.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's 10 factors, right? So that you have task, money, hang, portfolio, connections, learning, and service. And 4 out of the 7 need to be present. If there is more, that's great. But one thing is that there's the 3 extraneous variables, and those are, Elias?
Time, non-career satisfaction, and health.
Exactly. And health covers the whole spectrum of health. So, you know, you can have all 7 variables there. All of it is amazing. You know, you're getting paid $100,000 for this concert of your dream, Keri. You got you know, an amazing hang. You're hanging out with like Thaddeus in the whole thing. You're getting to sing the lead role. The portfolio is amazing. I mean, just everything is just incredible. But if one of those is sacrifice, the principle is to not do it. You know, don't sacrifice your health, your spiritual, physical, emotional, psychological, all of that. And then also time, you know, be a person of your word. You know, do you even have the time commitment? And then the last thing, and I think the most important thing that I advocate for, is non-career satisfaction. Because a lot of times what students do is that they think that, you know, they're trying to pursue the job. And even professionals, it's like we're pursuing the next opportunity, the next aspect of our job. But what I like to say is, like, you know, ultimately what we're building is something that will help increase the quality of life of others as well as ourselves. And we need to be able to know when to just unwind, decompress, and say, you know what, I need to enjoy what I have at the moment and be grateful the fact that I can spend personally with my wife, with my 2 kids, even though I have that continuous drive where it's just like, man, I should be working right now. I should be hustling, should be going for tackling the next thing. I get it. But, you know, like, what are those non-career satisfactions? Is it making sure that you have enough hang time with your family or your friends, or even me time, you know, drinking your coffee, which is pre-grind clarity is what I like to call it. So yes, all that was like super awesome when it comes to just the testimonies for when did you decide that it was time to start charging. All right, cool. So the second question is, what kind of things did you do to position yourself to convince those who are those movers and shakers, to convince them, you know, to pay you what you're worth? What are the things that you did once you decided?
Preparation.
Yes.
I was prepared. I mean, you know, I knew what I had to bring to the table when I walked into a room. I had done my research on who was singing what, where around the world. I knew who was being asked because I asked my friends. I mean, you know, I connected, I networked and said, who's auditioning for this? Is anybody else coming? You know, how many singers are they listening to for this role that I want? And then the goal was these are the things I know I do really well. So I want to be the top 20 out of these so that I'm in the top 20 that they're picking from, because then I can look to my right and my left and know I don't care if they pick them because they're just as good as I am. Does that make sense? Like so I had to get prepared to be so confident when I walked in a room that I thought, if you don't want it, I don't want you. Does that make sense?
Man, it's so powerful because first of all, I'm just going to type that in there, reasonable goal, because the confidence level that you have to have in yourself, your belief is that you are the best, not from a competitive standpoint, but that you are distinguishable enough to stand out, to be distinguishable, like untouchable. So from that regard, you have to be the best at what you bring to the table and know how to effectively communicate it. But I love how you made a reasonable goal when you conveyed it. It's like, you want to aim for top 20. If you can convince them that you're in the top 20, you know that you're the best. I know that I'm the best at certain things. I
Right.
know that I'm not the best at certain things, but I know that I could be, maybe top 10, top 20 or whatever. And then there's other things where I'm just like, yeah, don't even call me for that. Right. So you got to have those standards and those goals and the confidence to be able to get in that room, to be able to exude that level of self-efficacy and belief and convey the mission, that intrinsic value of who you are, so you can express that purpose and ultimately so that that role you can achieve that role. So it's identity, purpose, and role, right? And intrinsic value, but she also knows the extrinsic value of what she believes. And then that's why I put in the multi-level competitor analysis, which is basically, I think what's really cool that's happening right now is that y'all are just you're affirming something that I've broken down into a science, Keri. So for example, part of their business plan, they have to do a multi-level competitor analysis, which is something that you did. And what is that? I'll explain to you right now. So basically, what they have to do is, and just what you did is, based on your aspired vocational of interest, you looked at different competitors who function within, the space that you want to work in. And I'm sure you looked at local competitors, state level competitors, regional opera singers, national opera singers, and international opera singers. So those are the 5 stratifications. And then for each of them, intuitively, right? Intuitively, you probably looked at, you summarized and you were able to really get a good sense for each of their aims, who would be deemed competitors, not necessarily your competitors who you think, but the deemed competitors of the clientele and even like the managers, who do they think are your competitors? And you looked at
Right.
what their extrinsic and intrinsic aims that they offer as singers. You also looked at the value of their products and services. So you ask questions about, what do they charge, or how do they go about doing this, doing that. You probably assessed, qualitatively or even quantitatively the chronological data of their growth and decline in their careers, so that you can say, okay, make sure I don't do this, or make sure I do this kind of thing. And then you probably looked at demographic information of their employers and their employees, or just the different platforms, so that you can say, these are the ones that I really want to work at. And then you have demographic information of the consumers as well, like, okay, who are their clientele, who are the audiences in which they're performing in. And then lastly, you probably investigated the financial information regarding to what they normally do, and how does it vary within each opportunity, because there's different types of singing opportunities that offer different things. You have your 3 days, and then we put this thing, then you have this 1 week, and then you have this thing, you got your residencies, maybe there's a teaching component to it. And so then on top of that, you probably did this yourself, for yourself, and then you made a comparison for where do you rank among these types of singers who function maybe really successfully at a local level, state level, regional, national, and international. And then said, all right, these are the things, if I want to function in this space, maybe, and then you probably determined how frequently you want this space versus this type of opportunity. You at least determine what are those variables that you need to have in place to be able to execute those. So that's what the multi-level competitor analysis is. And it's basically what you described in your own words. So
I think, like, also as artists, it's really personal. It's hard when people don't want it, or they turn it down or whatever. And for me to take that hurt out of it when I wasn't picked, I had to look at it from all of this perspective, because that meant it was a business. That also meant that it was a game. It was a game to me to see where could I get here, here, and here based on this preparation and based on this knowledge. So then it didn't hurt so much when somebody didn't pick me, because I thought, that's okay. That singer is really awesome. I wasn't meant to have that job, but this next job is mine. Does that make sense? It was because I think sometimes, like, we are super As extroverted as we are when I'm performing, I'm extremely introverted, and feelings are very, very real, but that's what makes me really good at my job. Does that make sense? So it's managing all of that too. Within that, what you just said, multiple level competitor analysis.
Hey, there you go. Even a vocalist could say it. That's great.
Yeah.
Hey,
I don't know if that made any sense, but yeah.
so Thaddeus, how about you? What are the things that you did to like really step up your game, and say, look, this is your rate and you're not gonna lower it?
Um, I would have to echo the fact that for me, making it very much about the business. So for example, I learned very early on that if I think too much about what else is out there, or what the company is doing, or how much I need the job, or any of that stuff, it interferes with my ability to perform. And then I'd get overwhelmed and performance anxiety takes over. And it's really just, this very unfortunate snowball of fail. So again, preparation. I do all the preparation I can. I'm interested in being the best version of me and the best version of the product I have to offer. And then, for the audition process, I walk in, I bark, I have my chocolate cake, and I do not think about them again unless they put a contract in my hand. I just I don't have the bandwidth to carry all of that stuff around with me. So there's a million singers for them to pick from, but there's also a million auditions for me to do. So I got to focus my energy on that. So there's a lot of that going on. And then I think just again, kind of going back to what we said earlier, giving yourself the freedom to say, is this worthwhile to me, or is it not? And to give you guys a real world example, I will not name the name of this singer. You'll understand why in a second.
Uh-oh.
It's no one in this room.
Okay.
But I did a show with a very prominent singer. She's a very strong woman, and she told me about doing a concert in Mexico. And if you've never traveled to Mexico for the first time and don't know what Montezuma's Revenge is, there's certain bacteria in the water that our bodies are not necessarily used to.
That's also Nicaragua. I went to Nicaragua 4 times and had that experience.
So there you go. So this singer had that experience, and was lying on the floor of her hotel room, calling her husband and saying, "Babe, look, I know it's a good paycheck, but there's just no way. I cannot be more than 2 feet from this toilet. There's just no way." And he said, "Honey, that's fine, but I don't think we can pay our mortgage if you don't sing." So she took all the anti-diuretics, which of course means now she's extremely dried out. So now she's trying to drink as much bottled water as she can to hydrate. And she made the concert happen. It got great reviews. She got her paycheck. She didn't feel great about it, but they needed that paycheck. So because it was paying the mortgage, that gig was now worth it. But I mean, I love this example because for so many reasons, like you see the business end of it, you also see a bit of just the real life end of it. We are real human beings leading real lives. This is the non-glamorous stuff that comes into some of these decisions, and you get to still see the value judgment there of, was this really going to be worth it? I did turn down one more prominent resident artist gig near the end of my 20s, and I did that because on the one hand I had 5 contracts to do, each of them leading roles with smaller companies, or I could take this one resident artist gig. I knew the company had already canceled the opera in the fall. The other 2 operas didn't have anything major for me in it. So I wouldn't even have a role to cover. I'd just kind of be there doing a lot of these resident artist gigs also involve educational outreach. So you spend a lot of time, operatically quacking like a duck for 5-year-olds so that the company gets money from the schools bringing you in. And so, I looked at that and I said, I know this will look great on my resume, but I want to do these 5 roles instead. And I will tell you to this day, I do not regret it at all. I made the right decision.
No, that's awesome. That's fantastic. You know, what both of you are saying essentially falls in line with a new concept that I'm going to share with the class. So basically what I'm hearing are 8 steps for establishing rates. I have an ability to listen to what you're saying and basically synthesize it and put it into a framework. It's like my X-Men power.
That's
So
without the diarrhea. That's wonderful.
yeah, yeah.
I'll never be invited back.
Well, I said in the chat that for me, one time it was 19 times. It was bad. Yeah, sorry, it was bad.
You're saying
But
the song,
guys,
can you
I was a missionary in many countries for a lot of years. You know, that's one of my doctorates is a doctorate of missiology. So, yeah,
And that was just from the water?
that was from the water.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a reality of traveling.
Yeah,
It's a thing.
it is, you know, and it's not just what you drink. Sometimes it's also maybe if certain people cook with certain water, you know, it's just that different water is not the same in every country, right? And if you're just not used to it, that's, you know, so you have to have the bottled waters because you might not, you know, be able to tolerate it yet. You know what I mean? So there's definitely an initiation. Natural initiation. Yeah. Anyway, what I didn't know this was gonna go this way. You know, let's stick to negotiations here. Anyways, so what I'm hearing is step 1. You both of you are basically saying that you are focused on who and how many people and roles would the contractor have to even hire and replace you. And that's a one step to understanding your value. You know, so just remember that, students, take your notes. Who and how many people and roles would the contractor have to hire to even replace you? So you got to think about, you know, what are you providing that makes it easier for the contractor, right? And for the conductor or for whoever it is that, you know, the event manager, the show producer. Second thing that I'm hearing is how many roles are within the task being asked of you? That's something that you take into consideration, because if it's just to sing, you know, then maybe it's okay, but can we stratify all that goes into the preparation for that particular performance? It's not just here, sing. You got to practice, you got to rehearse, you got to memorize, you got to do the contracts, you got to sacrifice, you got to be able to say no to certain opportunities that would provide some type of financial income. And it's not that it needs to be equivocal. Like if I got a standard thing that's going on, why would I say, well, the only way I'll do this is if you pay me an equal amount? No, you have to pay me something for me to say no to this particular thing that I got steady that's going on. It cannot be equilateral. It needs to be significantly different, right? Because if it's equilateral pay, but then I got to travel further and I got to spend longer time away from my non-career satisfaction, my home, my comfort, my couch, you know, all of that stuff, then it's not worth it. So it's got to bring in something much more significant. Which brings to step 3. I hear this a lot with Thaddeus' statement in particular. You know, you're asking what is the return of investment of the product or the service that you are providing to the contractor as well, and what return of investment are you getting out of the experience? So all of these are 3 factors so far. 3 steps for establishing your rates. Step 4, what I heard was, where does the quality and merit of your product and service rank among the industry's best? I'll repeat that again. Where does the quality and merit of your products and services rank among the industry's best? And so that is a variable, right? And so that's why when you do the multi-level competitor analysis, it's gonna be dope. For you to be able to even see where do you actually rank. And these are the hard truths, you know, to actually, I think it's beautiful. Like, you know, doing these kind of things and asking yourselves these questions provides you a mirror, a status of where you are right now, you know, because there's a lot of lies out there telling you that, oh yeah, this is all you're gonna have to do, you know, just do the jury, do these recitals, and that's just what the real world is like. Wrong, you know. Step 5, another thought that I had based on what y'all were saying is, you know, you have to ask yourself, to what level is your passion and dedication? Because I'm hearing preparation from Keri. To what level is your passion and dedication towards the vision of your product and service that is being required by the contractor for you to make? So it's not just your passion and dedication, but what level of passion and dedication is required for you to make their dream come true. Because see, Keri has her passions and her dreams and things that she wants to do. But if she gets contracted, she's basically have to pause and say, all right, I'm not going to be able to do screamingdivas.com for this week or 2 weeks, which is, what I really want to do. So in order for me to be able to say, yes, this has got to be meaningful for me, and meaningful could be different things. It could certainly be reflected financially, but it could also be portfolio. Portfolio is not merely class, you being able to say that you've performed there, but also portfolio could be, let's say, the multimedia content that you gather that you can be able to leverage and repurpose and leverage for other opportunities. That's part of the portfolio. That's why when you go to KeriAlkema.com, she's got great killer portfolio of just the photo gallery, and the videos. It's like, wow, which is why now she's in a position where she doesn't have to try so hard to charge what she charges. So this all is built upon the notion that if your passion and dedication level is higher than normal for what you're being asked to do, then guess what? You should be compensated more, because it means that you will exceed the expected hours to create the product and service, and even allot opportunities to refine the product and service, right? So that your contractor is absolutely satisfied, right? If you're, so you're not basing things on by the hour class, this is your time. It's your expertise. It's where you rank among everybody else. It's your work dynamic with them, what you bring to the table. Then I heard a step 6, which is essentially basically that. It's remember not to charge by the hour. Your rate is based on the quality of your product, the distinguishability, I like that word, by the way, the distinguishability of your company's brand identity. So you notice that Keri was talking about like what she really brings to the table. She knows what she brings to the table. She can go into the office and say, this is what I specifically do. She knows the pieces that she does, the ones that she likes, the way she likes to perform it, the conductors, the style that she wants to work with, the kind of musicians she wants to work with, all of that stuff that makes part of her brand identity. So brand identity is not limited to what the product is that is extrinsic experience, like her voice, but also, the brand identity, part of it is just even the product development. The product, not her, it's her as a product and service, coupling with other businesses that produce products and services to create one massive product and service for that specific mission, which is, let's say, the performance. So your rate should be based on these 3 things. Are you ready, class? Again, the quality of your product, the distinguishability of your company's brand identity, and lastly, the track record for producing meaningful results that are competitive to your contemporaries. All right, the track record for producing meaningful results that are competitive to your contemporaries. That's another thing that I heard, which is, that's why you got to get this documentation out. You got to build that portfolio, right? You got to be able to show that evidence. Number 7, I heard that essentially that people are not paying for your service. They're paying for you to prioritize their dream within your schedule. I'll repeat that again. People do not pay for your service. They're paying for you to prioritize their dream within your schedule. And I think the last one, the 8th thing that I noticed was, they basically said that we need to consider the differences for the definition of the word, even talent, because we talk about talent agency, right? Talent agencies and booking and what they're looking for, in the arts, in the school of the arts school perspective, talent equates with a person's innate ability to do a task higher than normal level, and oftentimes producing a sense of wonder. That's great, but they're dealing with business people. They are artists functioning in the business world, right? So in arts business, you have to also embrace what talent means according to the business school, which equates talent with creating excellency within a time reduction. So they have to be able to produce quality in a short period of time, because there's only a limited amount of time to do, set number of rehearsals and then set number of concerts. This isn't a salaried thing. This is, a high performance gig. That's what I got from what y'all said. Thoughts?
It feels so much smarter when I hear it come out of your mouth than when I'm
Right?
trying to get it from my
Sure.
head to come out. So thank
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Here, you have the pink tie, and you have the awesome blonde hair. Cool, cool. So,
Um,
let me ask you this: how do you stand your ground when you negotiate an opportunity? And you know what is, first of all, maybe the first question is there a sort of a percentage that you can describe in terms of you seeking opportunities, or do you rely on people to call you? And then I guess the second question is, well, let's go with that first question. I'm curious.
um, I I'm always seeking opportunities because I love what I do. So I mean, you have to understand when it's when this is good, then you and your best friends in the whole wide world are all doing the thing you love. It's like playtime in the sandbox, and it's so amazing. So I am always seeking out opportunities like that. Um, and I would say within that same vein, I would not ask for permission on that side. I would not let the I did too much of this for too long. I would not let the industry tell you this is what you have to do and this is who you have to be and this is how you have to get work. I would be proactive about creating those opportunities and pursuing them. And then I think the more that you do that, and the more that you participate in that, then success does breed success, and people start talking and either want to work with you because they see what you've done, or because they've heard from other people that you've had a good recommendation. But I would say always be proactive about pursuing the things you want to do, whatever direction that takes you in.
Keri?
Can you ask the question one more time so I make
Yeah,
sure
to what degree are you seeking out opportunities versus them coming to you now that you have prepared?
Okay, so in my world, like the jobs would go through the manager and then to me. But I really took to heart early on when somebody said that the manager works for me, so I'm the one that's steering the ship. So what I did was I asked every friend I had, "Hey, do you know what's coming up? Do you know who's doing what's the season?" I'd ask my manager, "Hey," because they would get the 5-year plan for an opera company at the time. They don't do that so much anymore, and I would say who's doing what when, and then I would drive the ball. I made weekly appointments, or even if he had nothing to tell me, I just wanted to be up his what and say, "Here I am, I'm ready, let's do this." And this is what's so interesting about this, and I'll share just something a little personal. I did that with him, and I worked because I did it. I showed up, I was prepared, I was professional, and I brought my goods and my services to the table, and they wanted it again, because that was the goal, was to be, for my industry, to be rehired at the same company. um, my dad, I was actually on a plane headed to Santa Fe to sing a role, and I got a phone call. I had to get off the plane because a drunk driver hit and killed my dad. And from that time on, I always called it like I was carrying the ball. I carried my career was a ball. I carried it. I ran with it. I dropped that ball because I had so much work and so many wonderful opportunities when he died, that I focused on that, and I dropped the ball with my manager. And the difference in how much work I had when I pushed him and when I was on top of him all the time was immense. Because when I stopped doing that, when I stopped carrying that part of my job, and just focused on the creativity part, the opportunities for the creativity part dwindled.
Mm.
It had nothing to do with my talent. It just meant that the person that can facilitate me getting in front of a company to audition, or facilitate talking to that company to get me hired, I wasn't on top of him to make sure that he was doing his job. Does that make sense? I
Yeah,
don't mean that he was a good manager, but at the same time, it's my responsibility to make sure he's doing his job. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. He's basically he was going at your pace.
Yeah. Yes. So I mean, I drove it. I drove this is where I want to sing. This is who I want to sing for. I want that job. I drove it all the time. And then he could either facilitate that audition or not, because that's his job. I could never facilitate, because I wanted big companies. I wanted big money. I wanted big companies, and I couldn't facilitate that myself. You always
Big
had to go through
money.
the manager.
Big money.
I wanted it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. My goals were, I didn't want to be famous. I wanted to buy my first house by singing. Like, can you imagine? I wanted to use my music to buy a house. Like, that was my goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I told you that so that there's a creativity part and then there's a business part. And if both of those aren't working together, then some things can suffer. And for me, they did. Does that
There you
answer your
go.
question?
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So here's another question. You obviously found your niche by figuring what was missing in different spaces within the opera world, okay, the vocal world. But then what led you to do the podcast? Let's talk about that.
Okay.
And then how has the podcast sustained your career? Did the podcast bring in financial revenue at some point, or was it that it brought a level of publicity for you to maintain relevancy in the industry, and thus get, it's like, because of the influential power, influencer, the influential power, so talk about that. Talk about the podcast. What led to even doing the podcast? Because I will say this, I've been thinking about this more and more as I think about Thaddaeus, and really, people like Thaddeus, like you, who are vocal professionals, is that there's, we train people to be vocalists, but I think so much of what you do is to be effective communicators using the voice. So I actually think of this as a near transfer skill, your ability to go from one to the other, so maybe talk about how the podcast came about, and how has the podcast benefited your career?
Podcast came about, and I started filming because we did like a YouTube video filming it, and then I eventually put them all on a podcast so everybody could listen while they worked out, because I got requests for that. So anyway, I started because I left the stage in March of 2020 because of COVID, and within that next month, as I'm figuring out, everybody's freaking out, nobody knows what's going to happen if we're going back to work. And then as we realize we're not going back to work anytime soon, the emotions that I had for myself, I was not seeing online. I wasn't seeing on social media. And so I didn't need to hear people singing online. I needed to hear the conversations of, how are you feeling? What is going on? How are you dealing with this? What's the financial situation? Did you move back in with your parents? How are you paying your bills? Like, I needed to talk to these people. And then, so I said, I was saying this to a girlfriend. She's like, let's do it. And I said, all right, I have no idea what I'm doing, but we're going to do iMovie and Apple iMovie. And my husband hooked me up because he's a techie, and I just did it. And the lighting is horrible. My mother yelled at me about that. But then we decided to use my friend who does it with me. We use my connections and her connections. And we called everybody in the business, all the big wigs, not even non-music people. We were talking at lunch about the heavy metal rocker who has his own band. I mean, how are they going to get back to work? The conversations were wide and immensely cathartic for me. We have talked numerous times about making it a financially viable thing, like selling merch and all this kind of stuff. And we've talked about it would be really fun to do that. But to me, that wasn't the goal. To me, the goal was just to have these open communications about what was going on. I mean, as you all know, what happened in 2020 was immense. And so all of it affected all of our lives. And so how I wanted to have these conversations about what was going on. So financially, I was able, with YouTube and ads on the podcast, I was able to cover my expenses because, of hosting and of all the different tools I use to make all the different, video fun editing things. And so I was able to cover the expenses so nothing else came out of my pocket. How it affected my career. which I didn't think about it at the time, but a friend of mine said, this was so brilliant because you kept your name out there in the business so that nobody forgot me or forgot about my talent. And I said, that's so funny. I never even thought about it. But now, like, because we've stepped away from it, and we stepped away for about a year and we're coming back to it. But now, if I wanted to go audition for somebody that I'd never sung for, I've actually interviewed them so that I can make a phone call and say, hey, do you remember like Screaming Divas? Remember that I still sing? Can I come sing for you? I really have, like, I think that they'd hear me. Like, it's a very small percentage of where I think they'd say no. You know what I mean? So I think it helped keep my name in the business in a way I never even thought about or thought was possible. Does that make sense? So that's how I think it helped my career. Did that answer that? Was there another part of that question I haven't answered yet? I always forget. I
No.
get rambling.
No,
forgot the
that's good.
Gotta fill out the Scantron.
Yeah, you should be a professor because that's what we do. We ramble for
Right,
pay.
well,
You know,
I love to talk. I love to talk about what's important. I think, or at least important to me, and what I think, what I'm watching in the world, and what I'm watching in social media, and I'm watching from my colleagues, what needs to be discussed. I also know what people don't think they're allowed to talk about, and screw that. We're talking about it.
yeah. So, you basically are presenting some other things that I think are very valuable because, you're really talking about authenticity, which we've talked about here. It's a fine balance of, you've produced quality. I've seen those videos, the podcasts and the videos of Screaming Divas. You can check it out on YouTube. So everything maintains a great quality. But you also, produced a high quantity of those videos. So there's the quantitative aspect. So it's quality, quantity plus authenticity, which is being vulnerable, being true to who you are, of undisputed origin, and to be able to effectively, say what's on your mind, and I think that's very important. And maybe that is one of the reasons why you're well liked, and even more than well liked, we should be trusted. I think more than being well liked, we need to be trusted in the industry. There's people that I don't necessarily like want to hang out with them, but I'll hire them because I know that I can trust them, even on a moral level. Maybe we can't have coffee because, I'll be bored in the conversation, but I can, I could trust that the job, the work is going to be done, and it's going to be done effectively, but also I love the fact that, you basically took this opportunity, whether you realized it or not, I know you realize it now, to advocate for the wellness and the equality, which we hear these words so much, right? But you did it for your people, musicians, artists, which I really love, because it's like, oftentimes the divide tends to be based on other types of demographics, but it's rooted upon advocating for what we have in common, as opposed
Right.
to advocating for what we don't have and what is divided among us,
Right.
what is distinguishably different. And so, that is rule number one of how to create a culture, is to unite by the commonalities, as opposed to, trying to find your people rooted on what is dividing us. You know what I mean? It's separation, denominations, for example. You think about, different religious branches, right? Those are denominations. The etymology of that word actually means to remove your name, and it's rooted on this idea that the name which you're associated with, it has worth, has value, is rooted in identity. And so denom, nation, it means to, I'm stripping away my identity from you. That's so it's very interesting, right? So I think we do that oftentimes, even as musicians, or even as academics. It's like, well, yeah, I want to be a producer, or I'm a singer, or, oh, I do classical, oh no, I do hip hop. It's like, I'm a music lover. You know what I mean? And you don't limit yourself. And so that was really another fascinating thing, is that you use the talents that you have. And since you weren't allotted a performance space because of, of the COVID restrictions during that time, you were still able to utilize the gifts that you have in a different capacity. You still utilize your voice. You still put yourself out there. You projected your voice. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm sure you don't sing things, that you don't take plays or operas that you don't really like the story. You got to like the story, because it's all about messaging for you. You approach the career as communication. And so I think that's just a word of inspiration for all of us, that we have to be able to utilize our voices, whether it's blogging, whether it's podcasting, whatever. And by the way, that's a great way to improve your search engine optimization, SEO, right? So that you're not so that people can know you. And then when you do go to those spaces, let's say if it's a convention or a conference, people feel the desire to flock towards you, not because you're a celebrity, but because they have empathized and related with you. There's that level of trust, confidence. That comes from the Latin word etymology confideo, which means to have faith in you, or to have faith with you. So just some fascinating things regarding the podcast. Thanks for sharing and how you used it to leverage opportunity. So Thaddeus, talk to me. You don't have a podcast. Why not?
I do
No,
not.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go sit in the corner now.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
do
yeah.
love her podcast.
No,
It's
but what you do have is something very unique and very different, which is how to say yes to the right opportunities, and it landed you ultimately to even hit the red carpet this year. So there was, when we think about the vocalists in the Latin Grammys, it's like, okay, we got J-Lo, Bad Bunny, Alejandro Sanz and all that stuff. And then there's some guy who somehow made it and then made it into the winning side of things, Thaddeus Bourne. So, and so maybe talk to us about, the way why is it that for whatever reason, and don't just say me, because I know I gave an opportunity, but you really took it and you did it really well. You know what I mean? Well, maybe let's talk about the spirit of how you go about just your willingness to collaborate on great projects and not being afraid to try something new. You see, because that's, I think, what your greatest thing is that you really function in a spirit of courage. And I'm basically giving the answer. But
really, you really are. It's everything you just said.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, it's like your latest single right now is Obsesión, which is a Puerto Rican song from 1935. Okay, folks, that's like almost 90 years old, right? It's 88 years old. And you put it in you're willing to record your voice while maintaining your opera style, bel canto style, while the genre sounds hip hop ish, reggaeton ish. You know what I mean? And I mean, it's very, very different, but you're collaborating. So what how do you find these opportunities? How do you say yes to the opportunities? And what are you hoping to accomplish now? Because you've been allotted a lot of opportunities specifically within the Latin music arena, even though you're kind of a newbie, and you've been bestowed the highest award in music. So, tell me.
Where is it? Why
Um,
aren't we? Why isn't it sitting right here?
It
Sorry.
hasn't arrived yet.
they haven't arrived yet.
It really hasn't. Yeah. It really hasn't yet.
I would just say that for me, it's about I at my core, what's in it for me is great music with great people, and there's nothing better than that. There's no amount of money, there's no amount of anything that compares to great music with great people. So from that standpoint, it's really never about me in that sense. There's always this, I want to learn something new, I want to collaborate with people. I had it instilled on me by a very tough maestro in my early development that I could be a player, a musician, or an artist. So a player learns their notes and rhythms and gets everything as perfect as they can, and that's what they do, and that's a player. and a musician digs deeper, right? They not only know their part, but they do research and they find a way to lift those notes off the page, to breathe life into them in a way that nobody else can. But an artist does all of that and then looks at the greater work of the whole and is constantly looking at their colleagues and understanding what their strengths are. And an artist will even sacrifice some of their own interpretation for the greater story, for the greater music that's happening, because that's what they're there to do. And if collaborating with the person who's on your team means, okay, so even though I like this better, I'm going to do it this way because then the two of us make this happen, and this is what's at the center of it. That's what it is to be an artist. So I won't say I always get there, but that's what I'm always going for. And thankfully pursuing that has made me grow constantly. I'm always being pulled or stretched in a new way. I'm always rethinking what's at the core of what I do. And in the last 2 years, as we've been collaborating, Jose, that's part of what has pulled me into, well, as long as I'm on the side of vocal health and being true to my voice, why should I be married to just these one or two genres or styles? I can branch out into this. And you know, some of the collaboration we've done is, well, my voice has a lot of vibrato when I'm up here, and it would be nice if it did this instead, but I don't want to manipulate it into something untrue. So what if we drop the octave here? Or, you know what, this is an effect we can get with the Logic Pro. So instead of making my voice do it, we'll do this. Or at other times, it's really better if it comes from my voice because the effect is better. So here's something we're going to do in the studio. In live performance, we're not going to do this, but in the studio, in this controlled environment, I can make this sound for this long, and we can get, so there's a lot of collaboration back and forth, and I think it really comes down to that humility of saying, hey, we're just people having fun and making art, and at the end of the day, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting because you talk a lot about passion. And you know that I'm a sucker for etymology. I can't turn it off. But what you just described is the root of passion. Passion etymologically means sacrifice. You know, so it's like you think about the movie The Passion of the Christ. It had to do with the sacrifice of Christ, which passion is one form of expressing love. You know, and so it's selfless. It's saying, look, I know who I am, but you know, if it means that we are going to be able to relate better, and if we're going to be able to empower each other by me sacrificing, you know, everything that I want to do, or I'm sorry, you know, rather than me sacrificing, retaining 100% me, let me sacrifice a little bit so that I can meet you. If that means that there's a greater product in the merging, and that makes sense too, right? Because you know, by yourself, I told this to my wife. I said, you know, I realized something. By myself, I'm 100. By yourself, you're 1,000. All right. I tell her, she's like way better than me, right? But you know, when we join forces, it's actually not addition. It's not 1,000 plus 100. It is 1,000 times 100 that the output ends up being, which ends up being 100,000. You see? So, you know, think about that. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not good at math. Keri, you expressed that as well. I relate with you. People taught us math wrong. That's what happened. I like numbers. Yeah, no, seriously, you know, but
Hey, I'm so sorry to be the party kill, but I actually have to
We gotta go.
spirit
okay,
the great Keri Alkema
well, that was
for our
it.
next meeting.
That was it. Yeah, and then now Darius is going to take over right now with the topic of lead generation after a short 15-minute break. And thank you, everybody. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank
This
you
is
so
great,
much.
great information. Thank
Keri
you so
Alkema.
much.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Keri.
Pleasure.
Exceptional.
Thanks for having us. That was awesome. I
Yeah,
love this class. You guys are so lucky to have this class. I wish I had this in school. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, can I audit next semester? Thank you.
Yeah.